Hi, my name is Nadiah Bamadhaj. I'm here at Kiniko Gallery in Yogyakarta to take you through my exhibition entitled The Submissive Feminist, made in 2021. This show is managed by two groups, which is Kiniko Art Management in Yogyakarta and A+ Works of Art based in Kuala Lumpur. So I'll take you through the space. As you walk through the space, you will come across the first work, which I designed. It's called Empathy and Narcissism, 2021. Come through. As a lot of you know, the medium that I use for my work is charcoal on paper collage. I tear up strips of paper and I add charcoal onto the strips of paper with a dry sponge. I've been using this technique for many years. And I've kind of developed this technique over the years. Now, with this particular work, it combines the binary elements of what I think to be empathy and narcissism. And empathy is represented by my self-portrait at the top, and narcissism is represented by the portrait on the bottom. Now, in psychological terms, an empath and a narcissist often are in opposites to each other, but unfortunately also live and work together. So this kind of describes the beginning of the ideas towards this show. This entire show in this space is actually designed specifically for the Kiniko space. So what I've done is I've designed a one-piece, 5-component installation for the main wall of the space. This is an 8-by-4 meter wall. It is the primary wall of the space, and I've designed a work which reflects the title of the show, and this work is called The Submissive Feminist. So the ideas behind this work is what I went through during the pandemic, a kind of self-analysis of where I was in my career, things that I needed to change, and things that I needed to analyze about myself as an artist, and in the particular practice that I was in. So I'll kind of take you through each component one by one. Central to the installation are the images of a pair of closed lips, which are my lips. And the main idea of this installation is my silence, the silence that I've endured for quite a long time in managing myself, my practice, and my career. On the right, is a self-portrait also of myself. I'm carrying a burden, and the particular batik motif that I used for this burden is the parang rusak motif. Now, the parang rusak motif in Yogyakarta is primarily used within royal circles, but I wanted to emphasize that the burdens that I carry are royal to myself in particular. So it's a kind of borrowed metaphor for myself. On the top right-hand side is another wayang figure of a comb. What I'm referring to here are maybe a number of examples of relationships I've had in my life with people who represent groomers. The idea of grooming not only applies to sexual exploitation, but it also applies to economic exploitation. And I've represented this perfectly featured person as an element in my life that I needed to change. On the top left, my left, is a figure of an almari, specifically an antique in Yogyakarta. For me, this object represents my isolation prior to this time, where I spent many years kind of enclosed in my studio and not really connecting to the community around me. But it is in a beautiful object, so it can be described metaphorically as a gilded cage, so to speak. The final component of this installation is the keris that you can see behind me, my 3-meter keris. I've specifically chosen a keris which for me is symbolically male. It is pointed at the portrait of myself as a kind of threat. But it is also a keris without a hilt or a hulu. So for me, it is a keris without a soul, so to speak. So for me, this installation is made up of 5 components, but it tells one story, which is the story of me at a time where I was in a state of submissiveness, despite my fundamental belief in feminism. The rest of the works in this space also reflect the kind of submissive feminism that I'm talking about. So on the right of the installation is a work called Patram 2021. Patram is a keris based in Yogyakarta that is designed specifically for women. I photographed this keris at a keris maker's house and used it for this drawing specifically. The hulu of the keris is a portrait of myself bowed in a state of submissiveness, but it's juxtaposed against the blade of the keris, which is unsheathed and sharp. And I wanted to have that juxtaposition between submissiveness and force. If you move to that side of the space, is one of the final works in the show. This work is called Kain Adalah Doa. Now, I wanted to use, again, a traditional form of arts based in Yogyakarta, which is batik. Yeah? When I had a discussion with the curator of the Museum Batik in Yogyakarta, I was pressing him at the time to provide me with a motif that best reflected my current situation, a batik motif that best reflected my current situation as a woman, as an artist, and as a mother. And he kind of looked at me in a bewildered way, and he said, look, Bu Nadiah, kain adalah doa, which means that batik is an expression of your hopes and dreams. So it's better for you to design your own motif for the particular work that you want. So I was surprised at that, and I decided to kind of look at what I really wanted after all these years, which is to have my own home. And I made a drawing of a limasan, which is a traditional Javanese home. And I used my work paper to laser cut the limasan figure and placed it on my drawing as an expression of my dua, my hopes and dreams. The figure, which is also a self-portrait, is facing away because I'm looking towards the future and not looking back. So the final work in this show, The Submissive Feminist, is a work that I made last year in 2020. It's in this corner of the room. This work was made at a very difficult time in my life, and obviously during the middle of the pandemic last year. The work is called The Unlearning, and when I made it, I was in a state of extreme stress and anxiety. And I decided to put this work in the corner of the space because it is basically too emotive to sit anywhere else in the show. It needs to hide in the corner because it's very emotionally charged. But I think it relates to the show because the title, The Unlearning, is about me becoming consciously aware of how I became a submissive feminist and how I began to unlearn that condition as a submissive feminist, and how we got to this point today where I'm able to make a full-scale drawing installation in this particular space, in this particular point in time. So I'd like to thank you all very much for your attention, and thank the team from Mes 5 and Agensi.